we are still on Tomcat. This time around, we want to look at how we can use the graphical user interface to deploy Tomcat. In the last session, we were able to set up Tomcat, and based on security consideration and other factors, we're also able to change the port number. We created users in the tomcat-users.xml file. And the users we had Lagbaja, we also had Tamedu. So Lagbaja was assigned the manager GUI role, and Tamedu was granted the admin-GUI role. So we were also able to deploy our .wa package to the web apps directory using the command line interface. Now, to see what we deployed, this is our Tomcat web application manager, right? You can see we've been able to change our ports from the default 8080 to 8484, okay? So if you click on Manager App, right, it shows us like a replica of what we have in the web apps directory. So these are the deployments we had. We deployed Maven web application, right, which is this. We're also able to deploy Second, right? We deployed Second, although they are the same content, but the context part is what we changed, okay? So the same content is what we have, but you can see the context part is different, right? This is different from this, right? So the same content, because we cannot have the same context part to deploy this two different applications. This is just to demonstrate that. Okay, so now we've seen how we can deploy using the CLI. So I want to look at how we can deploy using the GUI. We can see we can deploy directly here. We can also deploy directly here, okay? So then we can also deploy by choosing a file, right? From our local computer. We can deploy by choosing a file from our local computer, okay? We can deploy by choosing a file from our local computer. So let's start by trying to use this field to deploy our application. Okay, so our directory path, right? Let's look at what we have on the, okay, this is what we have here. We have, this is where our Tomcat home directory is, right? You can see Tomcat. And we have the web apps directory here. So we can cd to web apps directory. Web apps directory. So here we have two applications, right? We have two deployments, this, right? And this. These are the packages, right? And the packages unwrapped are right by their sides, right? You can see. So this is the package unwrapped, okay? So what will happen is, you can see these are all we have here. If for some reason we say we want to deploy one of these apps, right? We want to deploy one of these apps, but we want to use a different context path, right? We want to have a different context path. Let's say this is the application we want to deploy. Let's say we want to deploy this, for example. Okay, PWD tells us we are in /opt/tomcat9/web apps, right? So if we copy this and we come in here to the browser to paste that, right? We can say Maven-web-application, for example, .wa. If I got that correctly, Maven/web/application.wa. Let me just confirm that. That's exactly what it is, Maven-web-application.wa. Okay, so I believe that's fine. Let's just maven-web-application.1. Okay, so that's fine. This is the part, right? Let's say instead of having, because we can't have Maven Web App here again, right? We can't have this here again, Maven Web App. Because we already have Maven Web App deployed. So the context part is going to be without the .wa, right? We can't have this deployed here again because we already have it, right? Because we already have it. So what we can do is to say, we can call this Maven app, web app. We can just say Maven, or just call it web app. Let's call this web application, right? We can just call it web application, just web application, right? So if we click on deploy now, right now you can see what we have here. The only applications deployed are second and Maven-web-application, right? But if we deploy this now, we'll see that apart from these two, there will be web application also deployed, right? So let's confirm what we have in our LS. You can see what we have at the moment. This is what we have. Second.wa and Maven-web-application.wa. Okay, so if we go ahead and deploy this right now, right? Oh, yeah. There should be a slash before the context part. There should be a slash before the context part. There should be a slash before the context part. So now, when we go ahead and deploy this, right, there should always be a slash, right, in front of this. Okay, so if we go ahead and deploy this, you see we have a successful deployment. You can see deployed application at context path. You can see the context path. So if we scroll down, you see we have a new deployment, web-application, right? So if we go ahead and right-click this, we'll see that we have a third deployment, right? Web application. This is the context part. So if we go ahead and check in here, we will notice that, let's check again, we should have, you see, we have the web application, right, unpacked, and we have the Maven-web-application.wa, right? So this is a different way of deploying the application using the graphical user interface. Okay, so we've seen how we can deploy, right? We also saw how we could undeploy in the last session, right? So let's look at undeploying all these applications and look at how we can deploy using the graphical user interface without any reliance on the Tomcat CLI. Okay, so the first thing we want to undeploy is second, right? Which was deployed using CLI in the last session, right? Undeployed, okay. So what else we want to undeploy? Web application, which we just deployed, okay, undeployed. And lastly, we can undeploy the Maven web application, right? So now we are left with the default directories that we have in Maven web apps, right? And Tomcat web apps. Okay, so now that we've undeployed, so if we come check here now, you see that we won't have any, you see, not found, because we've undeployed, okay? Not found and not found because we've undeployed this application. So we can't find them here any longer, okay? So what we want to do now is to deploy an application using the GUI without reliance on the Tomcat CLI, okay? So now to do that, let's take a look at our Maven server, right? This is our Maven server. I have this application, I have this build already done. This is the package, right? And this is my Maven server. whereas this is my Tomcat server, right? So if I come check Tomcat server now, you see that all these deployments are no longer here because we've undeployed over there, right? You can see they are all gone because we have undeployed. Okay, now having that, what is the next thing we need to do? We are not working on Tomcat server here. We are just trying to get some things from here, right? And deploy using the GUI, right? So looking at this now, if I want to deploy using the GUI, right, without relying on the Tomcat server in any way, you can see I can just choose a file. So when I'm prompted to choose a file, right, I'm prompted to choose a file, it's prompting me to choose from, this is my local computer, right? But I don't have this package in my local computer. So what do I do to make this happen, right? So what I need to do is to go to Maven and look at how I can download this, right? I want to download this to my local computer, right? So that is what I want to do. So to do that, this is my Git bash, right? This is my local computer. And inside here, you can see I have a PEM file, right, for this Linux server that I'm trying to download from. It's sitting right here. So it means I do not need password authentication to get that file, right? I could just use the PEM key to access the file, okay? Now, I want to copy a file from a remote location into my local computer, right? I want to download a file. So how do I do this? I can use the SCP command, right, which is secure copy, to copy this file from the remote server to my local computer, right? Just as we used it to copy the .wa package from Maven to Tomcat. But this time around, I'm trying to pull from here, from my local computer. I want to pull from the remote computer into my local computer, not like I'm transferring out, right? So this time around, I need to have access to the key, right? Which is great. It's always been here. It's always been in my downloads, okay? So what I want to do is to use the SCP command. There are different ways of going about this. You could use any of the FTP tools, maybe WinSCP, FileZilla, whatever it is. But for me, I like to use my SCP command, okay? So what I'll do in this situation is to say SCP, right? If, for example, I needed to use a password, right? I would need to specify the key, right? So I'll just say SCP, then I specify the remote username. So the remote username is EC2-user. You can see this is the remote username, EC2-user. So I want to specify that, okay? EC2-user at, okay, at, where does this EC2-user live, right? We want to get the IP address, okay? So I want to go to my, I want to go get Maven's, is this Maven? Let's see. I want to get my Maven's IP address, okay? This is my Maven. So I'm taking the public IP address because I'm trying to pull from my local computer, right? So I definitely need the public IP address. So I pick my public IP address, then I come in here, okay? I put that here, okay? That's where I'm getting it from, right? I want to copy from EC2-user that lives at that IP address, okay? So from where actually do I want to copy from, okay? From where do I want to copy from? So where I want to copy from, I want to go there to my, okay, let's say PWD, this is where I'm copying from. I need to specify the path, right? This copying from target, right? I'm copying from target. So I copy that. I come in here. Okay, that's where I'm copying from. Paste that. So what am I copying, right? These are questions, right? What am I copying? Something that ends in .war, right? That is what I'm copying. And where am I copying it to? In this location, it could be present working directory, or I might want to specify a different part, right? Within here, right? But since it's just right here, I want to copy it, I'll just say dot, right? Remember, there's a space between this, right? Because they are different components, dots, right? So looking at this, copy from this place, what? This thing that we have here in this part, right? Dot war, then copy to where? Copy to here. So dot is present working directory, right? So I'm copying to this location. But because there's no password created for that server and no password authentication done, right? I won't use it just like this, right? It would have been easier to use it like this, right? SCP, name at what address, where in that house, right? What am I bringing in? Dot, right? But because I'm using my perm key, right? So I want to introduce into the mix -I, right? As unspecified the file, right? This is a file I want to use to copy, right? That's a perm key. So I specify the file, then space, okay? So SCP, I've only introduced this to whatever mix we had. This will enable us open the door. And this won't work if the key, if this is not the key to the Maven server. Now that we have this, we can do enter. Okay, you can see it is downloaded here, right? So if we come now and check ls, I'm expecting that we see this file, right? You can see it is now here, okay? So if you recall, when we were trying to deploy the other time, we came in here and we tried choosing file, right? Remember when we went to download, there was nothing like this, right? You can see the time of download, 5:40. You can see the time on the screen, 5:41, okay? So this is the current time. This is the time of download, less than a minute ago. So we can click on this, right? Open, then we can deploy, okay? So you can see, okay, status message, okay, right? So this means it's a success, okay? So if you look at this now, you can see we now have Maven web application without the .war, right? It's the unwrapped package, right? So Maven -web -application, right? Without the .war shows that we have the unwrapped package. So it means that if we right click here and try to open, we can see we have a deployment. So our application has been successfully deployed, right? We have a deployment. Now, if you look at this, our deployment is successful. So we can see we now have Maven web app here. So if we go to the CLI as well, right? Let's go to Tomcat and see what we have. ls. Let's see what we have. If we check this, you can see our Maven web app is back, right? You know, it was missing here after we undeployed. Right now, we have everything. So with this, we have our deployment done using the GUI. So look forward to seeing you in the next class. Bye for now.